Pushpin disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created for emotional and entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real events is purely coincidental. The narrative explores human emotions, relationships, and challenges, but does not intend to promote or encourage any harmful, inappropriate, or offensive behavior. The story is written in English for a USA audience with the goal of creating suspense, emotional depth, and relatability. It started on a night that looked ordinary from the outside, but felt strangely heavy to me. I remember sitting alone in my small apartment, the dull hum of the refrigerator filling the silence, when a sudden knock on my door startled me. At first, I froze. No one ever visited me that late, especially not unannounced. The clock on the wall glowed 11:57 p.m., just a few minutes before midnight. My heart skipped. I walked to the door slowly, my footsteps echoing louder than usual against the wooden floor. I didn't ask who it was. I just pulled the door slightly open. And there he stood, a man I had never seen before. His eyes, sharp yet calm, locked onto mine. He didn't rush to explain himself. Instead, he smiled faintly and said the strangest thing I had ever heard from a stranger's lips: "Don't panic, you'll get used to it." My breath caught. The words didn't make sense, and yet the tone in which he said them, gentle, almost reassuring, made me hesitate to shut the door in his face. My instincts screamed to slam it shut and call the police, but something about him kept me frozen. His voice wasn't threatening. It was knowing, as if he understood a part of my future that I didn't. "Get used to what?" I finally managed to whisper. But he didn't answer directly. Instead, he tilted his head, almost as if studying me, and repeated softly, "Don't panic. It won't feel right at first. But you'll see." I stood there, caught between fear and curiosity. My fingers gripped the edge of the door tightly, unsure whether to push it shut or open it wider. The hallway light flickered, making the moment feel even more surreal. He wasn't dressed like someone dangerous, no mask, no weapon, just a plain jacket, dark jeans, and eyes that looked both tired and determined. "Who are you?" I demanded, though my voice trembled more than I wanted it to. He didn't give me his name. He just stepped 1 inch closer, enough for me to notice the faint scent of smoke clinging to his jacket. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "This is only the beginning. Trust me." Something inside me stirred. I didn't know whether it was dread, intrigue, or a mix of both, but I couldn't move. I felt as if I had been waiting for this moment without realizing it. That sentence, "Don't panic, you'll get used to it," echoed inside my head like a prophecy. By the time I blinked, he had already turned slightly, as if inviting me to follow him into the unknown. My world, which had been quiet and predictable just minutes ago, had cracked open. And as much as I wanted to resist, I knew deep down that my life was about to change forever. I kept staring at him, my hand still clinging to the door as though it was my last line of defense. The words he spoke replayed in my head like a broken record. "Don't panic, you'll get used to it." My chest tightened. Fear wanted me to slam the door and lock every bolt, but a quieter, almost irrational pull kept me standing there. There was something about the stranger, his voice, his composure, that made me feel he wasn't here to hurt me, though everything about the situation screamed danger. Finally, I forced myself to ask again, more firmly this time, "Used to what? What do you mean by that?" He paused, as if weighing his answer. Then he leaned slightly forward, his eyes never leaving mine. "Change," he said at last, his tone calm, steady. "The kind of change you can't run from. It's coming whether you want it or not. But if you listen, if you trust me just a little, it won't break you." I swallowed hard, his words settling like heavy stones in my chest. A stranger telling me about a change in my life? It sounded absurd, maybe even insane, yet he spoke with the certainty of someone who had lived this exact moment before. I tried to study him. His face was rugged, the kind that carried stories of sleepless nights and hard choices. His hands, though relaxed at his sides, looked rough, scarred in places, like someone who had worked or fought for survival. He didn't look like a threat, but he didn't look harmless either. "You can't just knock on someone's door at midnight and say things like that," I whispered, trying to summon courage. "Why me? Why now?" A faint smile tugged at his lips, but it wasn't mocking, it was almost sad. "Because you're the one who will understand," he replied softly. "And now is the only time that matters." My stomach churned. None of it made sense, yet I couldn't ignore the eerie certainty in his words. His voice wasn't demanding, it was reassuring, almost protective, as though he wasn't warning me of something he would do, but of something bigger, something neither of us could control. He stepped back slightly, giving me space, as if to say, "The choice is yours." "You'll be afraid," he admitted, nodding gently. "That's natural. But fear doesn't last forever. One day you'll look back and remember these words, and they'll make sense. Trust me, you'll get used to it." I should have closed the door. I should have ended the conversation right there. But instead, my grip loosened. His promise, cryptic as it was, hooked into me. There was no aggression in him, just a quiet conviction that unsettled me even more than anger would have. Why do I feel like I've been waiting for this? I muttered to myself, almost too softly for him to hear. He caught my words, and for the first time, his eyes softened with something that looked like recognition. "Because you have," he said simply. "And everything starts tonight." The hallway felt colder, the air heavier. I realized then that whatever this was, I was no longer standing on the safe side of the door. I was already stepping into his promise. I don't remember making the conscious decision to follow him, only that one moment I was standing frozen in the doorway, and the next I had stepped into the hallway. The faint click of my apartment door closing behind me echoed like a decision sealed. My heart raced, my mind screamed for me to go back, but my legs carried me forward anyway. He didn't look back at me immediately. Instead, he walked calmly down the dimly lit corridor, his footsteps steady, unhurried. It was as if he knew I would follow, as if my choice had already been made long before I realized it. When he finally turned his head, his eyes caught mine, and he gave the slightest nod, like a teacher acknowledging a student's first brave step. The hallway stretched endlessly that night, every flickering light bulb casting long shadows that seemed to move with us. My pulse pounded in my ears. 1,000 thoughts spiraled. What am I doing? Who is this man? What does he want from me? Yet layered beneath the panic was a strange current of anticipation, like stepping onto a roller coaster you never planned to ride. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice thin, trying not to crack under the weight of my fear. "To where it begins," he said, his tone steady, unshaken. "You don't need to understand it now. Just walk." The vagueness of his words only unsettled me more. "You can't expect me to just follow you blindly," I protested, though the sound of my own footsteps following his betrayed me. He glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. "You already are." Something in his reply struck me deep. He was right. Despite every rational instinct, I was still trailing behind him. My body moved even as my mind resisted. I hated the truth in that. We reached the stairwell. He held the door open for me, the gesture almost courteous, but I hesitated. The dark concrete steps spiraled downward, the kind of place that swallows sound and light. My stomach nodded. This was the threshold. If I went down there, I knew nothing in my life would remain the same. Sensing my hesitation, he spoke softly, repeating the words that had become both my anchor and my torment. "Don't panic. You'll get used to it." His calmness contrasted so violently with my fear that it almost calmed me. I drew in a shaky breath, gripped the cold metal railing, and took my first step downward. The air grew colder with every floor we descended. My skin prickled, my senses heightened. He didn't rush me. He just kept moving at a steady pace, as if he had walked this path countless times before. Each step felt heavier, but each one also pulled me further from the life I thought I knew. At the bottom, he stopped. Turning to face me, his expression was no longer distant, it was intense, searching. "This is where it begins for you," he said. "What you thought was your life was only the surface. Tonight, you see what lies beneath." I didn't understand him. I didn't want to. But as the door creaked open and a draft of cold air swept over me, I knew one thing. I had already crossed the point of no return. The door at the bottom of the stairwell opened into a space I couldn't quite define. It wasn't a basement, though it carried the damp chill of one. It wasn't a tunnel, though it stretched far beyond what my eyes could adjust to. The dim lights along the walls buzzed faintly, revealing only fragments of the unknown ahead. I hesitated at the threshold, gripping the frame as if stepping inside might erase the possibility of ever going back. He turned to me, his expression calm but purposeful. "This is the part that scares most people," he said. "Your body will want to run, your mind will want to scream. But if you stay, if you trust me, you'll understand." That word, trust, caught in my chest like a splinter. How could I trust a man I had met only minutes ago, a stranger who appeared at my door at midnight with cryptic promises and unsettling calm? And yet, here I was, following him down hallways and staircases into the unknown. Trust wasn't something I had chosen, it was something I was being forced to gamble with. "I don't even know your name," I whispered, my voice trembling as I stepped into the cold space. "You don't need it," he said firmly, his gaze locked onto mine. "Names only matter on the surface. Down here, only truth matters." The way he said it sent shivers down my spine. My instincts fought like wildfire inside me. Every nerve screamed to leave, to run back up those stairs and lock myself away in the safety of my apartment. But there was another pull, deeper, quieter, that urged me to stay. It wasn't logic, it was something else, something I couldn't name. He started walking again, and I trailed reluctantly behind. My footsteps echoed, loud in the emptiness, each one a reminder of my own hesitation. I wanted to demand answers, but part of me feared what those answers would be. "What happens if I don't stay?" I finally asked, my voice breaking the silence. He stopped. Slowly, he turned toward me, his eyes dark, unreadable. "Then you'll spend the rest of your life wondering. You'll wake up every day with the weight of what if on your chest. And no matter how hard you try, you'll never escape the feeling that something was left unfinished." His words pierced me deeper than I expected. He wasn't threatening me, he was describing a reality I already knew too well. A life of half-lived days, of playing safe, of burying questions I was too afraid to answer. My throat tightened because, in some terrible way, I realized he was right. I looked at him then, really looked. His face carried exhaustion, but also certainty. He wasn't smiling, wasn't trying to manipulate me with charm. He was simply presenting me with a choice: stay and face the fear, or leave and live with the regret. For the first time since he appeared at my door, I didn't see him as just a stranger. I saw him as a mirror, someone who had once stood exactly where I stood now, torn between fear and trust. My hands trembled, my heart pounded, but I whispered the only word I could manage: "Okay." And with that, I chose to walk further into the unknown. The air grew heavier the further we walked, pressing against my chest like an invisible weight. My breathing grew shallow, my body tense with every step. I kept glancing around, searching for some clue about where we were heading, but all I saw were dim lights stretching endlessly, casting long shadows that twisted with each flicker. The silence between us became unbearable. My mind screamed for answers, for reassurance, but he remained calm, steady, like a man walking a path he had memorized long ago. I hated how unshaken he seemed while I felt like unraveling. Then it happened. A low rumble echoed through the space, vibrating against the walls and the ground beneath my feet. The sound was unlike anything I'd ever heard, neither mechanical nor natural, but something in between, alive in a way that made my skin prickle. I froze instantly. "What was that?" I gasped, clutching my chest. He didn't answer right away. He stopped, turned to me, and studied my face with that same unsettling calm. "This is the moment," he said softly. "This is where most people break." The sound came again, louder this time, closer. My knees weakened. My imagination painted monsters in the shadows, creatures waiting to drag me away. I wanted to run, to scream, to claw my way back up the stairs and slam my door shut forever. Panic boiled inside me until it felt unbearable. "I can't do this," I whispered, shaking my head violently. My pulse pounded in my ears, my vision blurring with fear. "I'm not like you, I can't." Before I could finish, he stepped closer. Not threateningly, but firmly enough that I felt the weight of his presence. His voice cut through my panic like a blade through fog. "Yes, you can. You're already here. Your body is afraid, but fear is only the skin. Beneath it, "You are stronger than you believe. Don't let this be the moment that defines you." His words clashed with the terror coursing through me. My chest heaved, my mind screamed, but a sliver of something else began to surface: anger. Anger at myself for being so small, so fragile, so willing to retreat. The rumble grew into a roar, shaking the very walls. My hands flew to my ears, but it didn't help. It was inside me now, rattling my bones, clawing at the fragile barrier between who I was and who I might become. "I can't," I repeated, but my voice cracked, more desperate than defiant. "You can," he countered firmly. "You're already breaking. Let it happen. That's the point." And then I understood. This wasn't about surviving what was ahead. It was about surviving myself. My panic, my fear, my endless desire to cling to safety. The breaking point wasn't the sound, or the shadows, or even him, it was me. Tears stung my eyes as I sank to my knees, trembling under the weight of it all. But instead of collapsing into nothingness, something inside me shifted. The fear didn't vanish, but I felt it change shape, loosening its grip. I lifted my head, breathless, trembling, but alive. He watched me closely, and for the first time, he nodded, not with pity, but with approval. "You see," he murmured, "it doesn't destroy you. It frees you." And in that moment, I realized the breaking point wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The silence after the roar was almost unbearable. My own heartbeat felt louder than the echoes in the walls. I sat there on the cold ground, trembling, still half convinced I might collapse under the weight of what I'd just felt. But slowly, so slowly, I realized something strange. I was still here. The terror hadn't killed me. The fear hadn't swallowed me whole. I looked at my hands. They were shaking, yes, but there was a steadiness beginning to return beneath the tremor. My breaths came fast, shallow at first, but with each inhale and exhale, I felt them deepen, grow more controlled. The panic that had threatened to drown me moments ago was now ebbing like a tide pulling back to sea. He crouched down beside me, his gaze firm yet gentle. "Do you feel it?" he asked softly. I swallowed hard, nodding though I wasn't sure what he meant. What is happening to me?" "You're adapting," he said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Fear is a storm. At first, it tears through you, uproots everything. But the body, the mind, they learn. They adjust. And then what once seemed unbearable becomes familiar." I closed my eyes for a moment, testing his words. And he was right. The strange rumble, the vibration that had terrified me before, was still present, faintly humming beneath the silence. But it no longer felt like a death sentence. It was still unsettling, yes, but I was already adjusting to it. It was becoming a part of the background rather than the center of my fear. "You'll get used to it," he added, almost with a trace of a smile. Those words again. The very words that had unsettled me at my door now felt different. They weren't a threat. They were a truth, an uncomfortable truth, but one I could no longer deny. We began to walk again, though my steps were unsteady at first. My body felt lighter than it had before, though not because the fear was gone, it was because I was learning to carry it differently. I glanced at him as he walked ahead, his stride purposeful, steady. I wondered how many times he had been through this. How many breaking points had he endured before he learned to adapt so easily? "Does it always happen like this?" I asked, my voice tentative. "Always," he replied without hesitation. "The shape of fear changes, but the process is the same. Panic. Breaking. Adapting. And then you step forward, stronger than before." Something inside me shifted at those words. For the first time, I wasn't only following him because of his conviction, I was following because a piece of me wanted to believe it. We entered another stretch of the corridor. It was darker now, the lights fewer, the shadows thicker. And yet, I noticed something else. I wasn't as afraid of the dark as I had been before. The unknown still loomed ahead, but my body no longer shook with every step. For the first time since this began, I realized I wasn't just surviving. I was changing. And maybe, just maybe, I was beginning to understand why he had come to my door in the first place. The corridor narrowed as we walked, the ceiling dipping lower, the walls pressing closer, until it felt like the space itself was urging me towards some hidden destination. My breathing was steady now, more controlled than before, but a new tension grew inside me. I had followed him this far, endured fear I never thought I could survive, but the question still clawed at me. Why me? Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "You owe me an answer," I said, my voice echoing faintly off the concrete walls. "Why did you come to my door? Out of everyone in the world, why me?" He slowed his steps, but didn't turn around right away. For a moment, I thought he might ignore me, as he had brushed off so many of my questions before. But then he stopped, his shoulders rising and falling with a deep breath. When he faced me, there was no distance in his expression anymore. His eyes, shadowed but clear, met mine directly. "Because I was you," he said quietly. The words hit me harder than any roar, any rumble, any fear I'd faced so far. "What do you mean?" I asked, though my voice came out hoarse, my throat dry. He stepped closer, lowering his tone, as though confessing something sacred. "Years ago, I stood exactly where you are now. I opened a door I shouldn't have. I walked down a stairwell I didn't understand, and I broke in the same way you just did. Someone else guided me, someone who told me the same words I've told you tonight." I stared at him, trying to process the weight of what he was saying. My mind reeled. "So this is a cycle?" "Yes," he said, nodding. "A cycle of breaking and rebuilding. Of facing what most people spend their whole lives avoiding. Fear is not the enemy, it's the teacher. And when you finally stop running from it, when you learn to endure it, you become something more. Stronger. Freer." I shook my head, my heart thundering again, but not from panic, this time from realization. "You're saying this had to happen to me? That I didn't have a choice?" His expression softened, but his words carried weight. "No one ever truly has a choice. The knock comes for all of us eventually. Some ignore it. Some run. But you open the door." I felt dizzy, my back pressing against the cold wall. 1,000 moments from my past rushed into my mind, the restless nights, the quiet dissatisfaction, the constant sense that I was waiting for something I couldn't name. Was this it? Was this what I had been waiting for? He placed a hand gently on my shoulder, grounding me. "You think I came to you as a stranger," he said, his voice low but steady. "But the truth is, I came as a reflection. A reminder that this path isn't random, it's yours. It always was." His words lingered in the air, heavy, undeniable. And, suddenly, I understood. The sentence that had haunted me since the beginning, "Don't panic, you'll get used to it," wasn't just advice. It was a map. A legacy passed from one soul to the next. And now, it belonged to me. His hand lingered on my shoulder, steadying me, but the weight of his words pressed deeper than his touch. It was always my path. The idea spun inside me like a storm, terrifying, yet strangely comforting. I wanted to reject it, to call him mad, to walk away and pretend none of this had ever happened. But another part of me knew the truth. I had already changed. The person who opened the door at midnight wasn't the same person standing here now. Still, one question burned in me. What happens if I say no? He looked at me for a long moment, as though deciding how much truth I could bear. Finally, he answered, his tone somber. "You'll go back to your apartment. You'll wake up tomorrow and life will look the same, but it won't feel the same. You'll carry this night with you, the unanswered questions, the unfinished path. And one day, when fear grips you again, you'll remember me. And you'll regret walking away." His words sent a chill down my spine. I imagined myself retreating, locking the door, trying to pretend none of this had ever happened. Could I really live like that, haunted by the knowledge that I had turned away from something bigger than myself? "And if I stay?" I whispered. His expression softened, not with triumph, but with something gentler, almost paternal. "Then you'll learn. You'll break again and again, but each time you'll rebuild stronger. You'll discover what most people never allow themselves to see, that fear isn't a prison, it's a passage. You'll get used to it. Not because it becomes easy, but because you'll stop running." The phrase again. "Don't panic, you'll get used to it." It no longer felt like a warning. It felt like a choice. I closed my eyes, drawing in a long breath. Images flashed through my mind, my empty apartment, the quiet nights where I'd stared at the ceiling wondering if there was more to life than routine, than comfort. I thought of the fear I had just endured, the way it had nearly broken me and yet hadn't. I was still here. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. When I opened my eyes, he was watching me with quiet patience, as though he already knew what I would decide. "I'll stay," I said, my voice shaking but firm. A flicker of relief crossed his face, and he nodded slowly. "Then your path begins now." We stood in silence for a moment, and then he stepped back, gesturing toward the darkness ahead. It no longer looked like a void, it looked like a doorway. A threshold. I took a step forward. My legs trembled, my chest tightened, but I didn't stop. Fear walked with me, but it no longer led me. And as the darkness swallowed me whole, his voice followed, steady, unyielding, echoing in my mind like a promise. "Don't panic, you'll get used to it." And I realized then, it wasn't just his truth anymore. It was mine. 4.